If you clicked on this advice, I imagine you're in either one of two scenarios. The first is that you're in the planning stages of your Fangan and are looking for some advice on how to plan out your finale, and the second is that you actually have made it to the end of your project and are stuck on the final hurdles. If you're the latter, then I have some very good news and some very bad news. Good news, congratulations! Many Fangans get axed after the prologue, and most don't make it past the first chapter, so to have made it near the end is no easy feat. Now for the very bad news. If you're completely stumped on how to end it, it probably means you didn't plan it out very well, and that can be extremely hard to remedy at this stage of the project. I'll do my best to help you out, since it sucks that all that hard work would be for nothing, but this is why mysteries aren't the best genre for discovery writers, and why this genre especially needs a lot of setup. Now, exactly how to end your Fangan will depend entirely on your setup and what mood you're going for, and that means that this video specifically as a whole may be pretty vague, since there's not really one way to end a Fangan, and I'll get to that later. I'll link the channels I watch in the description below if you'd like to see where I get a lot of my own advice, and if there's one bit of advice that I can give that's universal no matter what you're doing, it's to broaden where you're getting your advice from. Though I have the feeling if you're writing your Fangan seriously, you're already aware of a couple of these channels. First, foremost, and at the top of the priority list, focus on just getting across the finish line without face planting. Danganronpa might be a series of amazing twists, but if you're a young and or beginner writer, it's okay to have it end with, then the mastermind was executed and the survivors were free. I mean, I imagine it'll be wordier than that, but it's a completely acceptable ending. It will always be better than some pretentious 18 to 20-year-old who, while planning the twist from the very beginning, shoveled in some dumb twist about everyone being a monster all along. I mean, that's a silly twist from the depths of some occult-obsessed author's brain. I hope that they grew out of that ridiculous plot phrase. Self-deprecation aside, a good execution of a bad idea will always be better than a bad execution of a good idea. Just do it, however predictable it may be, which is the best advice I can offer if you're already at the end and just stumped on how to finish. That may be the best you could hope for if you fail to plan your ending out. If there's one bit of specific advice from this video that sticks, please let it be this bit. There's no shortage of major projects in the last few years that absolutely tanked their properties and tainted them so badly it would take years to recover, if they ever did, because they decided to do an ending that was totally unpredictable. Because there was no foreshadowing for those events, it was done just so it was spoilers to say what happened and ensure everyone watched them on opening weekend, which I'm so glad has become the standard practice for one of the biggest cinematic universes in the world and perpetuates this culture exclusively for money-making products, while talented indie products are constantly spoiled because they don't have the billions of dollars and thousands of unpaid interns and sweatshop workers in order to keep the spoilers under wraps until everyone's already forked out obscene amounts of money to see mediocrity. Sorry. Secondly, have your ending utilize your themes and tone and provide some kind of closure. It's hard to talk about what I mean without using canon as an example, and it may take a bit to explain, but I will talk about a bad, a solid, and a good ending in that order. And the order they're in might be a surprise. So if you have a fear of controversial opinions, or don't want to hear me bitch about the endings of Danganronpa for almost 5 to 7 minutes, here's a timestamp to jump ahead right now. Haha, gotcha! There's almost no time to tap back in from your drawing. Nah, I'm just kidding. San, ni, ichi. I found Super Danganronpa 2's ending to be by far the weakest of the trilogy. It didn't follow the setup, and it seems overconfident it will get to explain its unresolved plot elements in other supplementary material, which it later did very poorly. Neither Danganronpa 1 or V3 do this, they can both be played separately, and as for Ultra Despair Girls, it wears on its sleeve that you'll need the supplementary reading, whereas it only really hits in the last chapter of Super Danganronpa 2, but hits hard. It also fails to show us the remnants of despair. Instead, it tells us about the remnants of despair. We're told that everyone present is a remnant of despair, but crucially, we aren't shown much of this at all. We're given this image, and we saw a bit from Mikon, but that was barely 10 minutes before she died. She could easily be interpreted as just being completely unhinged, and it's all we are shown of the remnants. Show don't tell is writing advice hammered into us from the moment we start a creative writing class, and it's extremely rare that telling works better than showing. This isn't one of those times. The twist also doesn't really follow up on the topic of how the talentless are affected by Hope's peak obsession with talent, or how everyone but the higher-ups suffer for it, beyond telling us the entire reserve course killed themselves and telling us Hajime allowed his brain to be scrambled into a zero. Because of that, it doesn't even really matter what the remnants did. You could have said that they were all vampires and had been performing blood sacrifices across Japan and Novoselic, and it wouldn't change the story beyond briefly having to explain that vampires exist. The message about moving forward towards the future, while a good idea, doesn't hit in the execution because of that. Super Danganronpa 2 has some of the best characters and setups in the entire series, so to see it all get dropped at the finish line like that is heartbreaking. Super Danganronpa 2 has ending twists for the sake of having ending twists, the fact that the Neo War program even exists being the biggest example of that. On a level of caring about these characters, I'm glad that they all do live in the end, but functionally and as a writer, that device is no different to It Was All a Dream. To summarize, the plot twists don't follow through on the setups, the story tells and doesn't show, and it all relies on supplementary material all of a sudden to make its ending even coherent. Danganronpa 1 is the good guys win, the bad guys lose ending, but I found it way more satisfying than 2's because of that simplicity. It wasn't trying to top anything or promote other material, and all of its twists made sense. The world ended, so that's why no one had been able to rescue everyone trapped inside the school. Junko had been masterminding the entire operation, and faked her death using her twin as her stand-in, and murdering her in front of everyone. That's how Monokuma functioned, and how she kept her identity a secret. And that's really it for twists. No virtual world, no everyone was really a terrorist, no we science crammed all the talent into this guy and ruined his life, just the world's gone to shit and it's Junko's fault. Granted, we're also not really shown the outside world very much, but it's not as crucial we see that as we see the remnants, because we aren't emotionally invested in the outside world, we're invested in the characters trying to get there. So, while this isn't a complex ending, it's a solid ending because it follows through on Makoto's established optimism in the face of hopeless odds. Makoto understands that the world is screwed, but truly believes he can still make it a better place. If you can't go for good, go for solid. Only overcomplicate matters if you can be sure you can pull it off. And V3's twist, I think, does what Danganronpa 2 failed. The twists have narrative relevance and play into the themes. Danganronpa V3 plays up style over substance over the course of its story, and while some people are obviously not going to care about this, it plays into the ending revelations perfectly thematically. The whole thing was a reality TV show, and Smokey insists that so long as the story is entertaining, she doesn't mind losing or even making the game unfair. It's all in the name of making the show interesting, and by this point, style is what is selling. Kaede getting falsely executed? Doesn't matter. It was the result that had narrative closure and would satisfy the audience's thirst for blood and misery and bittersweet hope, both in-universe and the real audience. And with that cat out of the bag, would it even have mattered if Kirumi, Korikyo, Gonto, or Kaito had been the culprits? After 53 seasons, all that matters is the ratings to Teen Danganronpa, and they'll do anything for engagement. Which is why I don't get why people say that it meant nothing that happened in the game mattered. The story was pretty clearly the anti-It Was All a Dream device. It was all entertainment to the nebulous audience, to us, but not to the characters, who are stuck fighting to stay alive, and those characters, despite being fictional, stay dead. For the characters we were invested in, everything was all too real, and it's rare to see someone who complains about V3's ending ruining everything for them to be anywhere near as critical of 2's ending. Shuichi screamed himself raw to assure everyone that he was real, that everyone was real, that they all mattered. And not only that, but V3 ends on a pretty ambiguous note, allowing you to decide how much of what Smoogie said was legit for yourself. That's kind of the point of the ending, to tie back reality and fiction to truth and lies. So with all of this said, I'm hoping what makes twists good, solid, and bad is at least a little more clear. For example, if your Fangan does take place in virtual reality and that's one of your major twists, then one of the first things you should be asking yourself is, why does it take place in virtual reality? If it's just so that most/every death is fake, that's a somewhat weak twist that just shows a lack of commitment, a lack of confidence in your Fangan's cases, or even in killing your characters. And that's fine, not everyone likes to murder their characters, but maybe don't write for a death game if you find it difficult to commit to character death. dead all along, and it was a dream / virtual world / TTRPG session / other device to make it not stick all along, requires a lot of setup and unique subversion to make good. Or, hell, that might be better relegated to the ongoing plot, especially if you're doing a dead all along and all the participants canonically died. Basically, if you're going to use a cliched twist, then at least freshen it up a bit with a unique spin. Although, even the twists of these tropes have been trodden over to hell and back, so maybe hold off on them and see what else you can use that's new. Now, again, your story doesn't necessarily need an overall twist. Hell, even the mastermind doesn't have to be a surprise. But what you do need is a mystery of some kind. These are mystery games at their core. Why has everyone been locked in? What's the status of the outside world? Just where the absolute fuck are they trapped? Is there a traitor among us? And if so, who? Why is the mastermind doing this? There should be some sort of mystery that the story is leading towards. It is more important that it makes sense than it's hidden, but try to make both happen. Now I know what you're thinking, but you just told us that we didn't need a twist. You don't! A mystery and a twist are not the same things. It's not even an all squares or rectangles thing. A plot twist is a revelation that twists the plot's trajectory. That would be something like in V3's first case where the true culprit was actually Samuki. That twist revelation in Chapter 6 changes the trajectory of the plot. It means Kaide wasn't executed innocent and leads into the revelation that the killing game is all scripted for entertainment. But Case 1 of Super Danganronpa 2's culprit is not a twist. Teruteru as the true killer is the mystery. Nagito being completely unhinged is the case's twist, since he'd been a relatively polite ally up to that point, and it twists the trajectory into him being Hajime's main rival. Twists in Danganronpa are like eggs in a cake. Most people think that they're essential, and they are in a lot of recipes, but they're honestly not essential. There's ways to make one without them, and if you do use them, you better be sure they're mixed thoroughly, cooked properly, and not out of date, or you're gonna have huge problems. But a mystery in this analogy is like a bowl. You kinda need one to put all the ingredients into. You won't get far without making a massive mess. Now thirdly, think about what kind of endings might work for your story's trajectory. Where are the characters' arcs going? What kind of ending does the setup call for? What kind of ending fits in with your themes? There is obviously the standard the world is fucked up setup, but to be honest, very few Fangans capitalize on what that setup can mean, and is generally used as a default ending. For a few examples, Super Danganronpa 2's setup establishes early on that the world has already gone to shit. If your Fangan starts off like that, try to think about why the world went to shit and what thematic purpose is served by the world going to shit. In Danganronpa, the world goes to shit because the education sector is a thinly veiled money-making scheme for a select few making a profit off of young prodigies and the aspiration to be them, and Junko exploits that and sets off the literal apocalypse because of it. Most Fangans I see get as far as, the world ended because it is Danganronpa and the world ended, and don't really have a reason for it or a message. Just, the world ended because otherwise someone could save our characters. Having a more meaningful reason than that will really improve your Fangan and help you with the writing by giving you a direction to go. There is also something to consider, more unconventional endings for Fangans. Granted, I did spend about half the video saying that the ending should work, but when it comes to themes, you'd be surprised by what can happen if you just put aside the standard ending and try for something a little more unique, if you're confident you can pull it off. I'll give some examples in descending order of how unique they are. If your Fangan is about an asshole protagonist slowly learning to put others before himself, over the final trial, have the mastermind declare that to win, the others have to offer up a sacrifice alongside them, and the formerly asshole self-centered protagonist offers himself up as the sacrifice. The two are executed, and the epilogue is shown from an outside third-person perspective, drained of the protagonist's personality, to show what their sacrifice did from an objective standpoint. Maybe his sacrifice didn't really change anything, or maybe it changed a lot. It depends on what kind of message you're going for. Another example of an unconventional ending helping with the themes, for a story about how easy it can be to fall into a cult-like mindset, a very sheltered protagonist slowly grows more and more jaded over the course of the story as she watches the bodies pile up and people die horribly. However, during the killing game, it seems like the mastermind might be slightly favoring her over the others, and several people take notice and shun her for it. By the time the mastermind is revealed, she's in the palm of the mastermind's hand and actually opts to sell out the rest of the class in order to join them. Everyone else is executed, and she becomes the mastermind's right-hand man, organizing a new killing game with another sheltered ultimate among its numbers. Honestly, one thing you can do if you're thinking of quitting your Fangan in the middle of it, have a culprit win. Literally, I don't think I've ever seen a Fangan conclude with a culprit actually outsmarting everyone and graduating, with every other character being executed. This is a conclusion that isn't too difficult to write. Have everyone miss a crucial piece of evidence that points to the true culprit. This may not be a very thematic ending without much setting up, but it's one of very few kinds of endings that actually make a lack of thematic elements at least not feel like a complete snooze fest. Life isn't fair, neither is this ending, the character's fucked up, and now they pay the price. So, concluding this tip, when it comes to concluding a Fangan, the world is kind of your oyster, so long as it makes sense. But I really must emphasize, so long as it makes sense. The beginning and the ending are what people are largely going to remember. They need to be good. If you screw up at the finish line, people are going to remember that. So, try to conclude well. I hope that this has been helpful. Again, very sorry this took a while to come out. I've been dealing with a really nasty flu of recent. I'm still not fully recovered, and it might take another week or so to do so. I'll probably keep doing Fangan tips for the time being. They're actually helping me a lot with sticking to the Hunted, which, yeah, that's not coming out this year, and that is my own shoddy planning and work ethic to blame. But either way, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.